Well, good morning, trekkers. It is Saturday, October 8th, 2021, about 7:59 in the morning. And Arlo and I are out here on the North Country Trail up in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, right between Forest Roads 519, or County Roads 519 and 513. Presque Isle River Road is just over that way a little bit. And it is raining, as it happens to do every time I come up to northern Michigan in October. Or maybe it snows too. It's hard to tell sometimes. Well, today's mission, this weekend's mission, is to put on a number of miles, a lot of miles for me anyway, on the North Country Trail, in that goal of reaching 100. Should do that this weekend, but that means going to get very wet. We've had the remnants of a tropical depression that planted itself right squarely on the state of Wisconsin, and we've just had bands of rain coming and going, sometimes very heavy, throughout the last 2 days, and it's going to continue over the next couple of days. And then there's a big storm system right out to the west that's kind of hit the wall, and it's getting ready, once this tropical depression moves on, to unleash its fury on this area too. So it's going to be a wet week. But it'll be a wet weekend. Feet will be wet, head will be wet, clothes will be wet, dog will be wet, everything will be wet. But that's part of the adventure, right? Well, I'm going to head Arlo back to the car here. We've done a couple of miles already, and I'm going to put on some different footwear and a pack, and I'll be heading out for several miles. And Arlo will hang out in the car while I go get superiorly wet. Now, checkers, I'm only half mile in on the trail proper, but Arlo and I did nearly 2 miles before this, so seems like a good time for a little update here. Today's hike is going to be a little boring visually, although we do have some pretty fall colors. As I mentioned in a previous video, just because of the drought and the warmer temperatures, the woods are a little schizophrenic this year in terms of when they're coloring and dropping their leaves. So we're not going to have that knockout awesome fall colors, but wow, we still do get this. And combined with the fact that it's oppressively humid and very wet. It is actually raining right now, but the canopy largely is protecting me from the worst of it. So I don't even have the umbrella out yet. There's also, on this section of the trail, there's no big hills, so there's no views. Not that you'd see anything with a view today anyway. But what you do have for the ups and downs is an innumerable number of ups and downs crossing drainage creeks. And it appears that the Superior Hiking Trail, or the North Country Trail, and it shows what where my brain is from a couple weeks ago. The North Country Trail, they've put some culverts in on a few of them. Makes it a little easier to cross, but you still have some of these boggy areas and some that you'll have to go up and down in. And nothing for it. Yeah. I'll probably be doing a little bit more yakking on this trip. Is this area, particularly here around the Presque Isle River Road and to the east or west a little bit, the Black River Road. I do know my directions, though on a day like today, you'd be forgiven if you forgot them. And Porcupine Mountain Wilderness area is just to the north. I've spent a lot of time here. I've gotten in deep in these woods and had some of the best times of my life in these woods. So we'll talk a little bit about some of them and give you a feel for what's all out here. All right, truckers. Later. At times I can hear the rain coming down rather heavily above me, but the canopy so far has protected me from almost all of it. I'm wet from, you can see, legs are wet from brushing up against the grass. Feet are wet from being in the wet ground, but largely I'm only wet from sweat up above, as it's very humid. This section of the trail follows a flat, narrow corridor, which appears to be an easement and through what I would presume is land owned by a logging company. And at some point up here, we'll hit National Forest. And I'm interested to see what the trail looks like as we hit the National Forest. Back in 2002, 2003, 2004, yeah, that long ago, I had an opportunity to support an adventure racing team in a multi-day adventure race that took place in these very woods. Being a support crew, it allowed me to get in very deep, driving through forest roads and logging roads, walking along trails, and actually spend some time. That period of time up here, those 3 weeks over 3 years, probably 3 of the better weeks I'd ever spent out in the wilderness. Oh, I've had some good ones, but those times, they'll stick with me forever. And they were so good that I even mix up the timelines of what I did in what year. Had 1 year, had a short family vacation, discovering the falls along the Black River before the adventure race. And the next 2 years after that, had some solo adventures. I think too that time stands out remarkably for me in that period of time was the beginning of a 4-year change in life where things took a good 20-degree left turn for me in my life. Also the time where those adventure races and that time alone in the wilderness kind of brought me to where I am now, where I wanted to start hiking, where hiking became the only thing I could do. And I've been up in these woods since then many times, but not on this trail. Where we're walking on this trail sits on a low, wide, I guess you'd say ridge, although it's more of a long bump. To the south of us, so we're traveling due west, to the south of us is a lot of marshland and woods. And all of that drains from this area down to our right, in that direction, which is north, drains down to Lake Superior. And as I mentioned, I've had some solo adventures up in this area. During that adventure race time, I would get up here and a couple of days before the adventure race and strike out on my own, seeing what I could see. 1 year Went up to the Porcupine Mountain Wilderness area, which is just north of here on County Road 519. It's a large state park, essentially, that has the shoreline, the rocky shoreline, 2 campgrounds, established campgrounds, and multiple backpacking campgrounds, and lots of trails. And as you'd expect for the shoreline of Lake Superior, it is not like this. It is hilly, rocky, muddy, rooted, very tough. Ruth and I did a 13-mile hike there that might as well have been 25 miles. It wiped us out. But back in the day, I was having some difficulty running, but on good days I could still run, I could still train. There were many things going on with my body back in 2003 that were not good.
Total distance 3 miles. Total time 1 hour 36 minutes and 41.
2004. I was definitely having some problems. What it turned out to be was all about my back, but that kind of went undiagnosed. But my running training, my tennis was suffering greatly. I could only put in so much, or I'd be laid up for a week or two. Just strange muscular injuries, cramping. Could not figure it out. It was definitely another slide towards where I am today. But I still was young and strong and determined, and had a great 2-day adventure. I drove up, just like I did yesterday. I drove up in pouring rain, and I remember it being 42 degrees and raining. And as I came up from down southern Wisconsin, the temperature just kept dropping and dropping until it hit and stayed around 42 or 43 degrees. And a persistent rain, much more persistent than what we're having right now. And I stayed holed up for a night and a morning and early afternoon in a room at a nearby lodge right on Black River Road. And definitely going stir crazy. I'd been in a car for many hours because I was actually coming up from Arkansas, and I'd been on the road for a couple of days. I needed to get out, but it was pouring rain. And right about 11 o'clock, noon, somewhere in there, the next day, the rain's kind of slackened off. And I decided, well, I am going for a hike. And I didn't know about the North Country Trail, but I knew there was a trail that went between these two roads. So I drove up to Black River Harbor, parked the car, got out with a bottle of water, and went to go do 12 and a half, 13 mile out and back. And did so, finishing in the dark. And it was this trail right here. Now, I believe this trail was a little bit more to the north, but I could be mistaken about that. Here's a story for you. On this trail, I had one of my 2 spooky hiking encounters. Now, one of them was over in northern Wisconsin, and that has since been explained with a natural, logical, yet spooky reason. This one remains yet unexplained. Now, for those of you who know me well, I don't go in for spooks and sprites and ghosts and angels and demons. To quote one of my friends, that's all a bunch of hooey. But this one defies explanation. As I was hiking on this trail in 2004, on the way out, going that direction, somewhere right around in here, I think we've yet to get to the spot. And again, I think the trail was a little further north, but I don't know that for sure. Descended into a wide bowl. It was probably a drainage area. It was a wide bowl, about 50 feet across and 6 or 7 feet deep. Just kind of a shallow kind of thing. Descend into it, descend out. The mosquitoes were horrendous, which they are not today, thankfully, although there are some gnats coming at my eyes right now. The mosquitoes were horrendous. I had to wear a head net pretty much the whole time. And as I was trucking along, I descended into this bowl, and as I got to the bottom of it, the mosquitoes were gone. Just like that. No mosquitoes. And I mean, there were clouds of mosquitoes around my head, right? And they were gone. And I had this feeling right in here, this overwhelming sense of dread, fear. I mean, and I've had that feeling before in my life. I've had opportunities to be scared for my life before then and since then. But it was completely unexplained. It wasn't that I felt that something was watching me, anything like that. Just while I was in that bowl, just absolutely petrified. Blood ran from my head. I just climbed up out of it, got to the top, bam, like that. I just, like a cloud cleared, and the mosquitoes were back. Now, keep in mind, that was on the way out. I had to come back through that yet. It was a good thing I could still run, because that's exactly what I did when I hit that spot. I ran through that bowl. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's muddy, it's raining, it's cloudy, there's no views. What are you doing? Why? Why subject yourself to this? Well, first of all, it's not that bad. I'm not getting all that wet. My feet are, but everything else is okay. It's raining, and when it rains hard, I bring out the umbrella. When it's not, I'm fine. Second, I'm not the only fool to hazard these conditions out here either. I've been seeing boot prints, the same boot prints, going in this direction. And they're water filled, so I'm guessing yesterday, day before. Nobody here today, though. I was the only car in the parking lot. And I've seen no prints coming this way. And, you know, I'll tell you another story in a little bit. Back in 03, 04, back in 03 or 04, I can't remember which it was. Part of supporting that adventure race team, those poor guys had to use inflatable kayaks to float down the Presque Isle River. As is at the end of August, in fact it's right over Memorial Day weekend, water levels are going to be at their seasonal low. We'd had a little bit of a drought, so it must have been 2003. Because 2004 we had heavy rains coming up here. And it was more of a drag your boat down the Presque Isle River for a good 8-9 miles, something like that. And the takeout point was at a bridge over the Presque Isle River in the middle of forest land. And I do mean in the middle of forest land. We, sport crew, we were led with our vehicles on a winding series of logging roads and forest roads to this bridge. Everything being gravel and dirt. And we made our little camp at this bridge. We'd worked with our teams to determine about what times they thought they'd be coming through. We thought we'd be there for roughly an hour and a half, and it turned into 4 hours. The first team, the strong team, not that ours wasn't strong, but a stronger team, and there's those boot prints I was talking about. They figured an hour, we figured an hour and a half. That first team came in 2.5 hours. Ours came in about 4 hours. Just shy of that. Meanwhile, we were camped out on the side of a forest road, a dirt road, 7 miles from pavement, near a bridge on the shores of the Presque River. 72 degrees, not a cloud in the sky, light breeze. We're a support crew, so we have food. And dogs running in the water as we're hanging out on this bridge, about 20 of us. Probably one of the best 3-hour periods of my life. Just fantastic. Well, without fanfare, without signage, without any ado, we have crossed into the Ottawa National Forest. The morning after that spooky hike, got up bright and early. I drove my car just a little bit to the end of pavement, unhooked my mountain bike, and went on a bike ride through the logging roads just south of here. And again, it's just terrain like this. There were no magical views, but it was a gorgeous, gorgeous day after 2 days of pouring rain. 65 degrees, beautiful sun. The woods were just spectacular in late August. Ended up being a 35-mile ride on purpose. That was the goal. I was hoping I could keep it to 29, but I wanted to go on a slightly different route once I got in there. Had to go a slightly different route. Either that or walk through a swamp. That was a great deal of fun, but on the way back on pavement on Highway 2, that west wind was strong. I was walking my bike more than I was riding it once I got past about 25 miles. That last 10 miles was a little rough on pavement. But you ask why we're out here, why we do these kind of things, why we subject ourselves to rain. We call it type 2 fun. It's the kind of fun that while you're in it, it can often be absolutely miserable. But when you get back home and you're relating the stories and you're going through the pictures, it's some of the best time of your life. As I'm wandering along here, I'm thinking, did I hide the dog treats? The dog food's covered. The people food is covered. But did I hide the dog treats? I have a feeling I'm going to get back and the bag of dog treats will be gone, and there will be bits of plastic all over the car. Silly doggies. That they would do things like that. But then I suppose we humans aren't much better. The way we treat alcohol, LSD, and peanut M&Ms. 2004 was the last of the 3 years that I was up here supporting the adventure race. 2005 and 2006, I could hardly walk, much less run, much less drive 5 hours. And I had the opportunity in 2004, the privilege, to help the race director take down the course. Now, the adventure racing course, they put up a bunch of orienteering markers out in the middle of nowhere. They find some torturous places to put them. And it was a great deal of fun, but we were chasing daylight, so we were moving fast. In his truck, we were driving down these forest roads and logging roads at speeds that I would not recommend. But it was a good time, and actually allowed me to almost run parts of the course in a way and really get in and see just what the racers had in front of them out in these woods. And one of the places that the race director decided to put an orienteering marker was on a tree on a little knoll in the middle of a small beaver pond. Well, that's just cruel. You actually have to wade through this beaver pond, and that's what we did to go get the orienteering marker. Torso high was the water, and it was full of beaver trails, which, if you're not careful, will allow you to splash down into the water up over your head. Which actually happened to the race director as he was explaining that to me. What was really funny about this particular spot was there's a little gravel turnaround parking area. This pond turns out is a favorite fishing area for the locals. And there was a pickup truck already there with 3 young people, 2 guys and a gal. The sun was getting ready to set, so they were out there to do some night fishing. And we come driving in, and we're hauling. We're 40 miles an hour, 35 miles an hour on these forest roads, and we come into that parking lot. We slam on the brakes, gravel's flying. We get out, slam the doors, and we run right into the pond and start wading through it. The look on the faces of these fishermen was absolutely priceless. If you look at this, clear skies, sunshine. Don't kid yourself, this isn't lasting for long. Be lucky if this lasts for an hour. We're just kind of in between bands of misery. Wow, look what it does to the woods. This is fantastic. Oh, beauty. Absolute beauty. And one of the places that the race director and I grabbed an orienteering marker from was from a narrow canyon and off a logging road just west of the Black River Road, out in the middle of nowhere. 5 miles, 6 miles from pavement. And he had me go in and get it, and he knew what he was doing. So we stop on the logging road. I get out and I run, and it's a rocky canyon. There's a little bit of a creek that comes out of it, and so I'm splashing my way up there through this toe-deep water, climbing over rocks. I get deeper and deeper into this canyon, and it narrows, 8 feet over my head, 10 feet over my head, and then you go through a narrow pass, and the walls are 15 feet up over your head, and it's emerald green moss and ferns and grasses, and the fading sunlight shining through the trees down into this green glen. And I spot the orienteering marker, but I didn't want to leave. One of the most beautiful sights I'd seen in my life. I could not take a picture of it. I did not have a camera, and we needed to get going. I always wanted to get back to that spot, that particular spot. And in 2010, 11, 12, somewhere in there, the years tend to blur by after a while, I did get back to that spot. And Ruth and I came and we camped up here and had a great week running around the countryside, going up into Porky's. That's where we did that epic 13-mile killer hike. And we also drove back on those logging roads four-wheel drive for the most part. And we found that canyon. I got in touch with the race director, got the coordinates, plotted it on the map, and we went and found it. And we parked at the end of it, and it wasn't quite as I'd remembered. And as I walked in, it was all brushy. There's more rocks, less water. I walked in and I found the cut. I was so excited, and I walked through the little cut, and it was just a mess of fallen trees. All the trees that had been up around the sides had been blown down in a windstorm 3 years prior, and they were all laying down in this canyon. The moss, the ferns were all crushed and hidden under small trees, large trees. That beauty had been fleeting, like so many things. But that's why we come out here, because views like this, you don't get them every day. How about that, Sanjay? Ha! A little winded, but kind of liking it. We took off from a muddy parking lot over on Presque Isle River Road, and we spent a short lunch break at Sunday Lake in Wakefield, and then made our way over to Black River Harbor. From Black River Harbor, we found the North Country Trail. Goes right through there, across the bridge, climbed up to the banks on the other side, and went to Rainbow Falls. And past Rainbow Falls turns into more of a footpath, or in this case a little two-track, and follows Saginaw Creek. And this is the route, this is the path I was on back in 2003 out the back hike. We won't meet up with where we were earlier today, where we turned around. It's a little too far for Arlo, and I frankly don't need to go that far after having done around 8 some miles this morning. But we'll go a little ways here. I believe I was fortunate to have been able to be on this trail and in these woods between these two rivers back when I was younger, fitter, and stronger. It allowed me to begin to develop the trail craft that would help me in years to come. But trekkers, like most things, we evolve our skills, and there were more difficult challenges in hiking to follow, harder terrain, harder days. But it was a Wednesday afternoon in late August 2003, about 3:30 p.m. on this trail at this very spot that I began the journey to be the outdoorsman and trail persona that I am today. Thanks for joining me today, trekkers. I hope you had a great time, because I sure did. Tomorrow,